All right, welcome to meeting number 21 of the WRAP Working Group. That just tells you how long we have been convening together and working together, and no signs of any reason to stop. So thank you for your continued attention. So I want to welcome all of you here and introduce the two guest speakers that we have. If we have time, after we hear from Chief Berlant and Brian Selecki, I will do a recap of where UP's current guidance is that we are giving to consumers on how to deal with the situation and how to replace their coverage if they've gotten dropped. But if we don't have time for that today, we'll get to it on the next one. So Daniel Berlant was kind enough to join us on relatively short notice. And Daniel is, I'd say, has been right in the heart of the work that we have been doing, both for quite a number of years. He was part of the tree mortality task force. Then he was part of the insurance subgroup with me and Supervisor Smallcombe and others in this effort. So I just asked Daniel to give us an update on how we're doing around the state and what kind of coordination CAL FIRE is doing, and with channeling funding and technical resources into communities and for individual households for risk reduction. And of course, Daniel, I think you've been at a lot of the meetings that have been happening with IBHS and all that. So I think people will be very interested to know a little update on that. So thanks for being with us, and the floor is yours.
Great. Well, thank you, Amy. Can you guys all hear me all right?
I think so.
Okay, perfect. At least you can. Well, good afternoon. Again, Daniel Berlant, Deputy Director of our Community Wildfire Preparedness and Mitigation Division, responsible for various elements in fire prevention, so defensible space, home hardening, development standards, et cetera. And as Amy mentioned, there are a lot of initiatives currently underway related to wildfire preparedness, related to mitigation. I'm going to really quickly here just show a couple slides just to kind of give you a quick idea visually of where the state is, when it comes to some of the wildfire strategies, if you will. This graphic that you are seeing shows really our strategy in kind of a visual representation. And so it really can be thought of in three different zones: that outer circle, looking at the forest, looking at restoration, the environment, and more large landscape level strategies. That inner circle is the wildland urban interface. And this is where we've been really focused on doing fuel reduction work, fuel breaks in and around communities. And so this is the work that's between the forest and more of the urban subdivisions and communities and homes. That center circle focused on the community itself. And this is where defensible space and home hardening. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the different projects that are underway in those areas. But I just wanted to at least kind of show that visual representation that for us, the strategy has to be, kind of an all of the above approach. We're doing a little bit of everything from restoration of our forests to protecting communities, to also building within communities in a different manner. And so there are a lot of programs and funding that are currently being rolled out. A couple of highlights that I wanted to hit on, and I know this is a very educated group, and so you may be just as informed as what I'm going to talk about, but bear with me, and if not, happy to answer any additional questions. But we've been doing a lot of research, like Amy mentioned, with the National Institute for Standards and Technology, NIST, with IBHS, the Institute for Insurance, Business and Home Safety, really trying to make sure that we have science behind the mitigation efforts that we are requiring and that we are suggesting. And those are elements in defensible space, but also in building code, materials and vents and things like that. One of the items that we found in some of that research really looked at embers and how embers were destroying homes. And we've seen this in a number of recent fires in California. Unfortunately, the fact that these homes are not burning because the fire burns up to them and the direct flame impingement catches the home on fire. It's oftentimes really from embers that are raining down, and those embers that are raining down, forced by strong winds, are burning homes when they are built with materials that are not ignition resistant. But more importantly, what we are finding, though, is that a home that, even if it's built to the latest California standards, and even if they have good defensible space, clearing 100 feet around their home, that first 5 feet has really become a key area for us. And I say key area really because research that was done that really kind of backed up, and I'm trying to find a slide here that I think really visually will demonstrate what I'm talking about. And sorry, bear with me as I share my screen, but really has found that embers are accumulating really within those first 5 feet. And here you can see, hopefully it's coming up right here. This is the research center back east, the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety. They are shooting embers out of those at a high speed. But the key here that I want to really show you is that the embers really based on wind eddying, just like water, where it hits a surface and then kind of circulates. You can see almost all of the embers stayed within a 5-foot zone right around the structure. So again, the wind forced it to hit the structure. It went over the structure. It went around the structure, but that wind would eddy down at the bottom, and those embers stayed within those first 5 feet. And so that first 5 feet has really been a focal point for us. Recent legislation, Assembly Bill 3074, passed in 2020, has charged the Board of Forestry to develop regulations that are currently underway to really define that ember resistant zone, that first 5 feet of defensible space, to make sure that not just new homes, but all homes are keeping flammable material away from that first 5 feet. And that's going to be a major challenge, just to be frank with you, in how do we roll out retroactively when people have roses and shrubs and other landscaping that adds to the decor of their home, mulch, bark, just honestly adding fuel to the fire. And so that is a big initiative currently underway when it comes to defensible space. But let's talk a little bit about home hardening and how do we really tackle that problem. Since 2008, new homes constructed in California are built in high hazard areas, that is, wildfire areas, are built to a higher standard. They're built with ember and fire ignition resistant materials. But just like what I was talking about with defensible space being retroactive, the building code is not. It's really for just new construction. And I saw some numbers that showed that new construction only makes up in the WUI maybe 5 to 10% of the overall homes in the wildland urban interface. And so how we retrofit homes is a real big tackle. A couple things we've done recently: we rolled out a low-cost retrofit list, encouraging homeowners and giving them tools of what are retrofits they can do that are effective, that help buy down their risk, but also don't cost a lot and maybe don't require a contractor's license per se. But the thing we haven't tackled yet, and that we're working diligently on, is what about those individuals in our state, in our communities who are vulnerable, who don't have the income, maybe based on their age or other disabilities, are not able to physically do this work? How do we address them? And so CAL FIRE and Cal OES, we have been partnering for, gosh, what feels like almost 2 years now, to develop a home hardening retrofit financial assistance program. we have formed a joint powers authority, and we are piloting a financial assistance retrofitting program. 3 communities have been selected in 3 kind of diverse, both being diverse in geographic areas, diverse in the populations, but also diverse in the density of the homes. So down in San Diego County, Shasta County, and Lake County, there are 3 communities that are being piloted for this project. We've been doing assessments to kind of determine what work needs to be done to retrofit these homes. And we're working with FEMA to bring in a significant amount of money to help with this program. The state has ponied up $100 million, the state has ponied up $25 million, and we are looking to get a match from FEMA. Initially, it was a 75-25 split. So state put in 25, and we've been working to get a 75 million from FEMA. FEMA just recently came back and said, hey, we'll actually match you 90-10. So we put in 10%, they'll match 90%. Yeah, definitely thumbs up, allows us to really expand it. Now, this is a pilot. We are working through, just to be honest with you, a number of environmental requirements of FEMA. There are a number of challenges of using federal dollars to do this type of work. It really has not been done to this scale anywhere else in the nation. And so working through the bureaucracies, my words, not FEMA's, is what this pilot is all about. Once we can address all the environmental reviews, and when we talk about environment, I don't just mean Endangered Species Act, for example. FEMA is also very concerned, rightfully so, as part of NEPA, the work that's done on historical buildings and the historical preservation elements of NEPA. So working through, if we want to retrofit a home that's older than 50 years, what additional requirements may need to occur to do that? And so we are hoping that by later this summer, we're actually swinging hammers and making some changes and upgrading, retrofitting these homes in these communities. And once we can successfully demonstrate this project works, we'll go back to the legislature. The governor's already suggested adding an additional 25 million into this program, again, with hopefully matching with federal dollars. But more importantly, we'll likely continue this joint powers authority until the legislature decides long-term what they want to do, because the program does sunset in 2025. But more importantly, we're working to build a framework so that any community can take the building retrofits that we've prioritized, the science behind based on density, because a home that's on a 1-acre parcel and a home that is 20 feet from its neighbor are likely going to need very different retrofits to address not just embers, but if one home catches on fire, we want to protect the one that's 20 feet away from it. And so those retrofits are different. And so that list of retrofits, those prioritization of retrofits, and then all those environmental hoops that we have jumped through successfully. And then any city or county can essentially on their own take the framework and apply to FEMA, put in their own match to FEMA, but can take this program. And so definitely excited about having these pilots be successful, but then definitely looking at whether we scale up, meaning, pilot out to more communities, or number 2, make it a competitive program where any community can apply to the Joint Powers Authority and hopefully be successful at receiving those financial assistance. I'm going to just take a pause there. And before I kind of talk about some of the efforts that Amy also hit on related to insurance, and then I'll also talk about some of the funding that's available. But I want to pause related to defensible space and home hardening and see if there's any questions on those 2 initiatives that you guys might have.
Yeah, great. Oh my gosh, Chief Berlant, we really appreciate you being on. I have a couple of quick small ones. So did you fashion the Joint Powers Authority on the California Earthquake Authority, Brace and Bolt, JPA? Yeah,
the Joint Powers Authority is structured. The program is structured-ish after the Brace and Bolt program. They are a little bit different, and to be honest with you, the scale of what we're trying to accomplish here is much greater than Brace and Bolt. but the foundation, if you will, they are the same. The JPA, by the way, in this case is a little different makeup as far as the membership. CAL FIRE has 2 representatives. I am one of those, and Cal OES will have 2 representatives. We're scheduled to meet for our first meeting here in June, but Cal OES, CAL FIRE make up the leadership, if you will, of the board of the JPA.
Gotcha. I see we have at least 2 questions, and we're going to get to just so that you know, this group, well, you recognize this is a high knowledge group. A lot of people in this in the working group have been kind of pioneering in their areas, and I think everything you're saying is, well, it's pretty great news to all of us. I mean, that there's dollars flowing in, that you're doing these 3 pilots to tackle what I think for a lot of the people that are trying to do the work in their communities is the barrier is people saying, sure, I'd love to do this stuff, but I don't have the money to do it. So getting to that and the technical part. So are you already kind of looking at means testing, or are you just trying to sort of set the basic structure of how a household would apply? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so we are really building the framework, the application process, the assessment process, the reimbursement process. I should note too that CAL FIRE, Cal OES, the JPA, we're not actually giving money to homeowners. We are partnering with these communities. So in San Diego, for example, the county itself is the applicant, and they are the ones who will actually receive the state and federal dollars. They're the ones who would actually pay for the contractors to do the work. We are in other communities, it's a resource conservation district that's doing it. So it's not necessarily governmental. And again, back to the pilot, we want to see what's the difference. San Diego County has a lot more capacity than the Shasta County Resource Conservation District. And that's not a dig at the Shasta RCD. Those volunteers and the small staff they have are great, but we know that capacity to run a program like this can be a challenge. And so what things in the framework do we need to build to help smaller communities be just as successful as larger communities?
Sure. Okay, great. So again, we're gonna get to the questions, and just a reminder that this initiative, and you probably know this, we do our best to integrate with what you guys are doing, with what the Department of Insurance is doing, with what Fire Safe Council people, Firewise people are doing, the scientific researchers. We're trying to, this is a resource. So just to remind you, Chief Berlant, that we're here. We're here as partners. So
Amy,
I saw Neil Peterson is our first question that I saw go up. Neil.
Yes, my name is Neil Peterson. I live in northern Marin County, and as you may know, we have a authority here in Marin County, governmental authority that's providing funding and resources for open space primarily, but not single family homes at the moment. And so you presented a lot of information this morning, and I was wondering if you have anything on your CAL FIRE website that goes into more detail so I can digest it a little more slowly. But this is all good news. And you said something about a sunset at 2025, and I wasn't quite sure what that referred to.
Yeah, so let me take the first question. Our website has a lot of great information, but despite me going fast today, there is a lot. And so it may be harder to kind of wade through. What I can though do, Neil, if this works for you and the rest of the gang, is provide Amy a presentation and some update notes so that you can kind of dive in a little bit more with contact information so we can follow up if there are specific items. Because to be honest with you, there is more occurring right now within the state in this space than I have time to do. And our website, from my perspective, has too much. The second piece, though, my reference to the sunsetting, the Joint Powers Authority is a pilot. The way the legislation, Assembly Bill 38 that established it, was written, it would sunset in 2025. We also, though, are required to come back to the legislature at that same time with a report on our findings, our successes, our metrics, Then it would be up to the legislature to make the determination whether or not they wanted to continue the state JPA. And again, I differentiate that because during that time period, we're going to build framework for any community fire safe council to keep doing this. But if the state stays in this business, that will be a decision of the legislature in 2025.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thanks. Patty Ciesla, am I pronouncing that right?
Ciesla, thank you.
Ciesla.
Thank you. So, Daniel, just wanted to go back to the first topic you covered, which was the Ember zone, the first 5 feet zero zone, and the regulation making it AB 3074. I've been to a couple of community meetings lately, and the shock of what to do about plants, foundation plantings in particular around the home. A lot of people, their homes, if they're really close to each other, there's not a lot of vegetation on either side because of side yards needing walkways. But many people have courtyards and other things where, in many cases, some of the only plants they have are in that 0 to 5 foot zone. And to remove the vegetation in that area basically means they don't have a garden anymore. Things like, maple, beautiful Japanese maple trees, wisteria vines, beautiful old gardenia bushes, just treasured plants in that 0 zone. And I'm wondering if CAL FIRE has been meeting with anybody that's in social sciences about the shock factor and the rejection of the idea that you need to do this simply because it's not something people can even imagine or conceive of, that kind of a change on their property. Is there something that you guys are doing to research? How are we going to help people cope with this?
A great question, Patty. I don't have all the answers as far as how we get the behavior change we're looking for. And just to speak frankly, I think from our agency, we have known that the science and the data was there. NFPA has had it as more or less a standard for many, many years. However, the things you just listed make it a big challenge. And I think from our perspective, mainly based on the fact that the legislature made it a law, we're kind of in this perspective of we just got to start and we can refine it. Now, the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection, which is separate from my agency, is responsible for promulgating those regulations. So what they end up looking like will be up to that board. Though there is a work group that was established and that is being chaired by a representative from the UC Cooperative Extension. And so obviously they have master gardeners, they have researchers, they have academia, they have science, to lead that. And again, that's just one individual. The group is diverse as far as representatives from the fire service and other entities, that other stakeholders. They are trying to actually broaden that as we speak. And I can drop in the chat feature. Oh no, I think it was disabled. I can include to Amy some contacts. So the point, I guess, Patty, is there's going to need to be more work to kind of figure out the social sciences and how do we get that behavior change, because the emotional attachment to roses, for example, that have been there for 100 years is way different than weeds 30 feet away from your home. Something we'll be looking at as far as the enforcement. Two quick things though, and then we can move to the next item. One is this will go into effect first in new construction, where it's going to be a lot easier. Second though, is that retroactive piece, and your point about denser homes and vegetation that maybe is not as flammable is a good question. That is something this work group is that's developing these regulations is talking about. What I'll mention though, in my next quick little piece though, maybe we're actually running out of time, so I'll just throw it here now if it's okay. Oh, actually, Steve, Steve Hawks is on, so
you're good.
Help drop some links in here as well. Steve, can you drop in a link to the Board of Forestry's website? But the thing I wanted to mention is, separate from this initiative, IBHS has been building, and I don't know if any of you have had them on, but they're building their prepared homes initiative. And as part of it, they are requiring a 0 to 5 foot area that has nothing. And in fact, they'll use words that talk about the fact that it again is nothing. So the roses or succulents, maple trees, vegetation that we know is less flammable. By the way, anything can burn. but is less, and maybe is then less risk, are discussions that the work group under the Board of Forestry is talking through. But the initiative under the kind of the insurance arm of things, that research arm, they're recommending absolutely nothing in that first 5 feet.
Well, that's
Amy, why
really
is it- Amy, why is it-
fascinating. And hang on, Susan, hang on.
Oh, I just used the chat.
Yeah, just hang on one sec. You know, I've heard some very important nuggets in what you said, Chief Berlant, in terms of distinguishing between plants and trying to address the very legitimate heartbreak that Patty talked about, that I think, and, you know, I don't think your guys want to be going out and, you know, penalizing people who love plants. It's a really tough one. So it sounds like there's some work maybe we could do to try to help the IBHS folks be maybe a little softer in some way, to have, we're not talking about people raising baby eucalyptus bushes, right? So that's really helpful. We had one more person with their hand up and then Susan. So Dudley Carlson.
Yes, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yep.
You mentioned a list of low-cost ways to retrofit the cheap and dirty, if you will. And I wonder if there's a way that we can access that list at this point for those of us who are already working on that.
Yeah, I am Googling it as we speak. Steve Hawks from my team, who's on here, he's our acting assistant deputy director. Actually, I'm going to beat you to it. I just dropped it into the chat. There's a link to our low-cost retrofit list. We also have, for bonus, if you act now, 5 additional ways that you can enhance your home hardening or your retrofitting through some defensible space. So I just threw that in the chat.
Emily, can you check? I do not see anything in the chat. So could you, it should be available.
It's in my chat.
You see it?
Yeah.
Huh, okay.
I do as
Must-
well. I see it now too.
You guys see it? Okay, great. All right. Was that your question?
My question, yeah, this chat was disabled, so I couldn't ask a question or do anything. So,
Understood.
but now it's not, I guess.
No, I was asking actually if the Dudley Carlson question was answered.
Yes, it is. Thanks.
Okay, great. Okay, at long last, Susan, what's your
That was
question?
my question. The chat was
Oh.
disabled. so
Oh,
I
that's a question. All
We're
right.
okay now.
Okay, great. All right, terrific. Well, I'd like to then let Daniel get to the rest of his, did we lose you, Daniel? Are you?
I'm still here. Can you see me and hear me?
There you are. I
Okay.
see. It highlights the people who are talking. Yeah, so let's get to, this is great, because I really want to hear, we want to, you know, we had Daniel Gorham on, talking a lot about sort of the technical, you know, what kind of research IBHS has been doing. And then when they came out, you know, this group prepared our list of 13 steps, and then then IBHS came out with their list, and then the joint partnership I know that you've been involved in came up with theirs, and we have a comparison chart. They look very similar. A lot of people ask the question of like, you know, do I have to do everything, or can I just do a few things? And those are, I know, kind of hanging questions out there. So as far as, you know, we know that IBHS, of course, it's funded by the insurance industry, but they've been doing really important work in advancing our shared objective, you know, what brought this group together to try to establish the kind of financial incentives and rewards vis-a-vis insurance that would really motivate people, in addition to not wanting to get a fine for violating the 5 feet, but even more so, like, you know, trying to help bring the prices down of home insurance in the WUI areas, and also just sort of restore some normalcy to the market. So with that, I'd very much like to hear, you know, we have not been at some of the meetings with IBHS, so we don't know. I know that they are very, I think they've been working as closely as they can with you, with CAL FIRE, but I know there's like, you know, all kinds of jurisdictional issues. So can you just kind of give us some glimmers of what we may have missed in terms of where the IBHS is on their certification? And we can certainly have them back. But for us, you know, we got very, you know, involved in supporting the Department of Insurance regulations, and it became very clear in those discussions that one of the sort of sticking points for insurers is community-wide participation, right? I think we've really got them, they get it, that you can move the needle, and they accept that. And that's, you know, that on an individual home basis, you can make a home more wildfire resistant. I think there's sort of a general acceptance there. But that they feel they still have this very strong talking point that, you know, it takes a village, and if it's, and, you know, great, one house does something, but we need a lot of houses. So obviously, you know, that you're focused on that. So can you sort of bring us in a little bit more on your conversations with IBHS? And I think,
Yeah, let me lay some
I'm sorry. This is Michael Newman from IBHS.
I was just going to say, I think we have Michael Newman. So
Yeah.
Michael, if you want to kind of tag team with Daniel, so he's
Well,
not.
let me just lay some framework, and then I'm happy to turn over to Michael. I don't want to, and I'm actually glad Michael is on here because I don't want to steal their thunder or talk about their program. I'll just note that you did kind of mention that there are kind of these multiple fronts of trying to address the mitigation standards, specifically connected to insurance. And so obviously IBHS has their initiative, the Safer from Wildfires, which is the Department of Insurance's initiative, but work with you, Amy, and your staff and this team, CAL FIRE, Cal OES, and others. And one of the things we've been really working hard at CAL FIRE in all of these different groups is to make sure that there's consistency amongst them. There are some differences, and again, I'll defer to IBHS to talk about that. I'm going to, though, focus on the Safer from Wildfires program, because that is really what the state of California has been focusing on. And like you said, I'm glad that obviously you've shared with your team the great spreadsheet that you guys came up with that kind of shows the differences, because to be honest with you, we have multiple initiatives occurring right now. And so that can cause some confusion, which could lead to a problem when we come to implement it if homeowners get caught in the middle of, well, which one do I have to follow? If one's more restrictive than the other. And that's, we don't want homeowners to feel or residents to feel overwhelmed and then not again get the behavior change. But let me quickly just breeze through the Department of Insurance's Safer from Wildfire. So it's really a three-step program. The first one is protecting the structure, and these are really those home hardening efforts, really focused on the low-cost retrofit list, but also some key areas. Class A fire rated roof, which to be honest with you is not low cost, but in reality, research and modeling has showed that there's probably about less than 1% of homes in California that don't have a Class A roof today. So in fact, majority of our housing is already at Class A. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that we've had these code requirements now for decades, and roofs don't last forever. So even if you have a home that's 60 years, it's likely that you've had to replace your roof by now. And so when you went to replace it, wood shake roof no longer on the market. And in reality, no longer really in style in many regions of California. Again, I won't read you this full list. Steve, if you don't mind, maybe you can drop a link into where people can get more information about this, but really focused on, and this is where the key for us was, the requirements you see here are identical requirements in Chapter 7A of the Building Code for new construction, of course, but we wanted to make sure that we're not requiring and that insurance companies aren't requiring things to do to your home that are not part of the existing building code and the existing standard already agreed upon of what it means to build a home to an ignition resistant state. So you can see here the key things I would just hit on: Class A roof, that 0 to 5 foot zone, making sure that you have ember and fire resistant vents, which is really critical. That is a low cost item. Upgrading windows to double pane, that is not low cost. And then enclosed eaves, that too can be a little bit more challenging. But again, those are just kind of the tenets of the first zone. The second one, again, I won't go too much in detail. This really is just defensible space, clearing vegetation 100 feet around your home, really focused on that 30-foot zone, but just being in compliance with your local ordinance is really important. And then third, Amy, you tagged on this, and this is one that Roy Wright, who heads up IBHS, has very well articulated. If there was an answer to this, we would already be doing it. And so really between us, IBHS, NFPA, I would assume maybe Amy, you have a definition at UP, but nobody has really been able to define what's a community. You know, is your neighborhood a community? Is your city boundary a community? But boundary lines are kind of for a city or a county are more political. You know, they're not necessarily based on topography and fire risk, and they also may not have a single identity for a homeowner of this is my community. And so defining that is a bit more challenging. What in this initiative really has taken into account is looking at existing programs that provide some type of definition or some type of boundary, and that can include FireWise communities through NFPA. That can include a new designation that's being developed right now by the state called the Fire Risk Reduction Community. It'll be through the Board of Forestry and Fire Protection. It's really for cities and counties, and it's a little bit more extensive, but it's a designation. So there are designations that are looking at, but again, I think IBHS is still working, and Michael may have an update on the prepared communities that they are working on. But the key that I wanted to hit on, besides kind of educating the group on the Safer for Wildfires, the Department of Insurance's initiative, what I really wanted to hit for the group though is between the Department of Insurance, between United Policyholders, and so kind of the advocacy piece of things, between the insurers, between CAL FIRE, between Cal OES, between IBHS, we're all doing our best here to coordinate, because I think we all realize that at the end of the day, if the insurance companies, if your fire department, if your building department, if we tell you different things and we're not consistent, we're not going to get that behavior change. The insurance companies at the end of the day may have some additional requirements that we choose not to have as part of the code, and that may be something we have to work through. But at the end of the day, I think the success we're going to see at truly reducing and buying down our risk is by communicating these set of standards that are consistent across not just the entire state, but are consistent across the different stakeholders. So that's a very quick rundown of the Department of Insurance's initiative to kind of create some standardization. Again, DOI would be better at answering this. They're trying to work this into a regulations package right now that would create this standard. How it then blends with IBHS's prepared communities here in California, I'm not quite sure. And that is kind of an item that will have to be worked through. Before I take a pause though, I want to talk really quickly about funding. There is so much money right now available in the mitigation space, whether it be fuel reduction around communities, as I mentioned, forest management, defensible space, home hardening. There are a lot of resources. I want to talk though about the state's piece of this. So last year, the governor asked the legislature for about $1 billion in wildfire and forest resiliency funding. The legislature came back and said, we'll do 1.5. So they upped it. The governor asked for money immediately in January. They took action in April, and that allowed us several extra months beyond the normal fiscal year to start rolling out programs. And so we were actually able to roll out about $138 million worth of grants that we just issued this at the end of 2021. But we're already back to the beginning of a budget cycle. You've probably heard, but if you haven't, the state has a $100 billion surplus. And so the governor is once again asking the legislature to pony up dollars for wildfire and forest resilience action. And he's asked for $1.2 billion over the next 2 years to continue the work that we've done. And the piece I really want to stress for this group is that means funding in the $100+ million range for both our forest health grant program, but also, and more importantly, from my perspective, in the work we do at least, the fire prevention, the wildfire prevention grant program. And so if you're not familiar with our grant program, we kind of have 3 main buckets of funding, and those are fuel reduction, fuel breaks in and around communities, hazardous vegetation removal, et cetera, wildfire planning. That can be anything from creating a community wildfire protection plan, updating a safety element for a city or county, or any other planning documents that help make sure your community is planning in anticipation for a fire. And then lastly, public education. So educating the community on these various programs, efforts that are underway. We are currently probably about a week away from announcing the latest round of grants. I think we have about $120 million, give or take a million or two, that we will be announcing likely around June 1st. But in the governor's budget, going back to the $1.2 billion request to the legislature, the governor has funded about $115 million 2 years. So about, if you add it up, that's about $250 million spread out over 2 years to continue our wildfire prevention grant program. So if you're not familiar, that is a great resource, a good way to bring money back to your communities to do some of this work. Almost every entity, state, federal, local, fire districts, fire safe councils, resource conservation district, nonprofit groups, anybody beyond private individuals and private companies are eligible. So there's a pretty large eligibility list for this program. It also doesn't require a match, which helps alleviate some of the burden that some grant programs require. So, Lizanne, I see your question for communities to apply for manage these funds. We need more capacity. It is a great point. The state is investing dollars in several different programs that hope to address this. A workforce development program. We also need people to do the work. That too is a huge challenge. Getting contractors, getting arborists, getting people to do this work is a challenge. So workforce development, but also funding. The Department of Conservation has the Regional Forest and Fire Capacity Program. They too are trying to build regional collaboratives to bring resources together to build up that capacity. So Lizanne, I don't have an easy answer for you, but that's just one piece I have. But Amy, I'll turn it back to you.
Let me do this. I am obviously, there's a ton. I think people would like to talk, with you and have, the rest of the time. But we do have one other presenter that did prepare a few slides, and I want to give him some time. And he has a regional program I want people to hear about. But Michael, I'm so glad that you're with us. But how about we just do this? Can we agree, if possible, June, I believe our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, June 28th. I would give the whole thing to IBHS if you think you can do that. And that way we don't cut you off. We don't cut Brian Selecki off, who's our scheduled other speaker. But Daniel, I think, if maybe we could get you back here when IBHS presents on the 28th, maybe, instead of, we were going to invite David Hsu, but I think you guys are kind of the source. You're right there. So if that would be all right, then
Amy, we'll be happy to join you on the 28th, regardless of what the agenda is. Steve Hawks is still on, and I do have to run, as you know. But if there's questions, we're happy to answer them in the comments. Amy, thank you for the time, and thank you everybody for your dedication.
Thanks for the positive energy, all the good work, and it feels like we're going in the right direction.
We are. Thank you. We just got to keep going.
It really does feel like that. And Michael, thank you so much for committing to do the 28th. I mean, in the 1 minute before I want to give Brian his time, is there anything that you really just felt like you're going to burst if you don't share?
I will say only this. We are launching Wildfire Prepared Home next month. It's going to go live. So coming back to speak with you all on June 28th is wonderful timing, and we look forward to it.
That's great. Thank you so much. I'm I don't know, Pollyanna. I feel like, we have 3 different, versions. We're going to get there. Everybody has really good intentions, and we're going to get there. We're going to smooth these edges out. I mean, for my money, if we have 2 different standards, but they both qualify, that's okay. So anyway, thank you again, Michael, for being on. But if you could just, feel free to stay on if Brian, let's see where we get to. So, I wanted to, go back to, our agenda. We've got, Brian Selecki, here to talk to us about, the Town of Paradise, retrofit program. Brian, was kind enough to put a few slides together that he's going to share. And Brian just really knocked our socks off when we found out what he was doing, and talk about being a Pollyanna, just and believing that good's going to prevail in Paradise. So thanks for being with us, Brian.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. I do refer to myself as an irrational optimist. So I can definitely understand what you're saying there. And so thanks to everybody. And I could sit here and listen to the chief talk all afternoon about the stuff he was talking about. And I know CAL FIRE and his team have been huge partners of ours as we move through the last 3-4 years. And so we're grateful for his team and all the efforts. And they're definitely a part of our retrofit work we're working on as well. And so let me share my screen here. Let's see. Oh, it's asking me for permissions first. Hold on one second.
If you have any trouble, I have them. I can.
Give me 10 seconds here and I should be able to do it.
Okay. All right.
Oh, actually, if you could do it, I have to.
Sure. Okay.
My settings aren't set.
For working, Emily, are you able to do it? Are you able to share your screen with the 3 slides?
If not, we don't really need them.
Okay.
Yeah, I would need a second to pull them up though.
Okay, that's fine. I wanted to say to the working group members that since I think, Chief Berlant threw a lot of really good food out there for thought. If you have questions that you want to ask and have either of him or of the IBHS personnel, if you could you are more than welcome to email those to emily@uphelp.org, and we will have those folks prepped for the 28th to answer those questions for you. So thanks again, Brian, and thank you, Emily.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Emily, for pulling those up. So yes, my name is Brian Selecki. I'm the project manager for recovery and economic development at the town of Paradise. So as the chief was referring to, all of the moving pieces and bureaucracy involved in federal and state funding projects, that's what I get to do all day. And so it's a great honor and joy really to be a part of the recovery of this community. And so I've been here in Chico Butte County for going on almost 30 years now, and it's my home, and I'm just really proud of our community and the way we've rallied to get through so much, from the Oroville Dam to Camp Fire to the North Complex to COVID. We've had a lot, like most of us have, and so grateful for all of your guys' efforts and getting us to a better place with all this insurance and fire safety and whatnot. And so I just thought I'd spend a few minutes kind of giving you an update on some of the projects we are working on that will really reduce wildfire risk. And so if you can go to that next page, Emily. These are the projects that are kind of occupying the most of my time. We've got these in-process HMGP projects. We've been working on these projects for almost 2.5 years, some of them even a little bit longer. And they have actually bundled them all together into an environmental assessment. And so that's where we've been working through the environmental assessment process with FEMA and our partners at Cal OES. But these are the main projects I've been working on. One is a defensible space code enforcement project. As we are a small town community with a small town staff, and now we've got 12,000 vacant parcels. It's a challenge for our small code enforcement team to keep on top of those vacant parcels and making sure they're staying in defensible space compliance. And so we've got a grant out there to help fund 3 years of kind of really extensive code enforcement and making sure those properties are in compliance, because it's a real stress to those who have been rebuilding to have properties surrounding them that are filled with either dead trees or very tall invasive Scotch broom that is highly flammable. And then another project, the hazardous fuels reduction on public property and in our town right-of-ways. That's a $1.6 million project that will reduce the fuel load on basically all the right-of-ways within the town of Paradise, as well as a couple of public property parcels. And then one of the biggest projects we're working on is our Category 4 tree removal program. We've been removing trees since the day of the fire, and it continues. We recently, in the fall, finished the state and FEMA PA program to remove dead and dying trees from the campfire. And now what's left are trees that didn't meet the standards of that program, which was 2 times the height to the nearest road. So if you had a 50-foot tree that was 100 feet from a road, it was eligible for the PA program. But if it was 55 feet tall, it was not. And so we still have property owners who are struggling with dead trees on their property. And this will be a program to go in and remove those additional trees. And so that is out to the assessment phase right now. We are just assessing our arborist contracts today, actually. So hope to have a contract and have that program open to the public here in another month or so. And we'll begin assessing properties in August and September, get the tree inventory universe to Cal OES and FEMA by the end of the year, so we can actually be cutting those trees in early 2023. As I've said multiple times, it goes slowly, but we keep moving forward. Our early warning system was the top priority in the town post campfire, and that was recently fully approved. And so that is out to bid right now for construction. We hope to break ground here in the fall for that. That will be a series of 21 siren towers all around the town that we can use for tones or also messages to the community, because we learned in the campfire that information and notification was the biggest issue we faced in our evacuation. And then the one that we'll spend a little bit more time talking about, the residential ignition resistant retrofit program. It's an $8.5 million project that we are in phase 1 of. So if you could go to the next slide, Emily, it gives a little more details on that. Really, we're in phase 1, but phase 1 is also on hold due to the environmental assessment FEMA is doing. And so we've been in that kind of status quo now for about 18 months. And we're hoping that will finish up here by the end of the year. And we just got an extension, so that phase 1 will be actually complete by summer of 2023. The program is for 100 approved applications or 100 approved properties. And
in other words, you've already approved them. You've got them.
No, we have not. We will.
Okay.
We have not
Sorry to
opened
interrupt.
that.
Okay.
No, that's fine. Thank you for the
You
clarification.
you still have a process you're going to have to go through to sift.
Correct.
Gotcha.
So right now, we're working on the same stuff that Chief Berlant was talking about in terms of what will be the eligible actions and whatnot. And it'll be a 75-25% split between the property owner and or any other outside agencies that could potentially help bridge that gap. And we're hoping to have 100 properties. And so that would be 10% of the housing stock that survived the fire. We had just over 1,000 homes that are remaining that would be eligible. And so we're hoping to make a big impact in that. And so again, it's designed to assist homeowners in bringing their homes up to the standards, the 7A standards, which the chief was talking about. So of course, all the typical projects that I know you have spent probably more time than I have discussing. Roof siding, window replacement, door deck replacement, other similar improvements, enclosing of eaves, venting, all of that kind of stuff. And so we are hoping to have this project open to applicants in early 2023. So that we can do the final environmental approvals and have those projects being worked on in the spring. And so we have no idea what the response will be. It's a little challenging to tell of those remaining homes, how many of them have not been brought to standard. There was so much fire damage after the fire to those that in smoke and other damage that was occurred to the properties that survived the fire, that a lot of them had retrofit work done post-fire before people moved back in. Some of them are still in their pre-WUI standard state as well. So, but we're hoping to make a big dent in that group of housing. And so that's the program we're excited about. We're hoping to get it up, like I said, on the ground by early 2023. And I think that's the only other project. So those are the projects we're working on right now that really will be beneficial to all of this conversation about reducing the wildfire risk in the community. I know we've been really involved with all the groups that are working on this and are grateful for all the efforts you are all putting in. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Well, thank you so much, Brian. We do have Lizanne in Santa Cruz asking to learn a little bit more about your early warning system.
Definitely. And I mean, I can go into more detail here, or Lizanne, if you want to reach out, I've got your email address there and I'll send you a note as well. But yeah, that's going to be a coordinated system overseen by the fire department. And like I said, it'll be 21 towers that should be able to be heard by every spot within the town. And we can get out voice messages or tonal messages. They'll be able to be operated individually or in groups or as an entire system. So that we believe that will be extremely beneficial as we hopefully never have to activate them.
Yeah, well, great. And any other questions for Brian from anyone about the program that they or the well, I'm particularly interested in the now the name, it was a wildfire ignition resistant. Did you guys pattern that on another program?
For the retrofit program?
Yes.
You know, we've been really kind of piggybacking on all the efforts of CAL FIRE and their pilot programs. And so we've been in regular conversation with them. Our program's a little bit structured different. And so, but we're really trying to kind of match up with all the kind of requirements of the program and the eligible projects. But that program that team's been really helpful to us as we get ready for that.
Yeah. All right. Well, great. Any other questions for Brian? Raise your hand or if you don't know how to do that, just jump right in. Okay. So let's see. I'm just going to go back for 1 minute here. We are not going to have time for me to give my update on our shopping stuff, but I did want to give you all the link. This link here will take you to the webinar that we did a couple weeks ago that is available free of charge. And just these were our panelists. We had 3 insurance agents in different parts of the state and somebody from the Department of Insurance. The slide deck is available, you know, you can share the slide deck with your residents. It's got just educational stuff and where you can turn for help. We've got some information about the moratoriums, which are expiring in a number of areas, which I guess arguably is a good thing. That means there wasn't another fire, but it's not a good thing when it comes to the insurance. Then just a reminder that we know people can't get their report. It's very hard to know what your risk score is. Different insurers are using different models, but there is a lot of talk about and the Department of Insurance regulations would require insurers to tell you more about how they see you. Of course, you know, this we're bragging on all of y'all and all the good work that we've been doing together through this working group. And then if you didn't know, we have an open survey that we really are encouraging everyone to take and to share. And this is our way of keeping tabs on what is going on in the market, what kind of price increases people are getting hit with, whether people are dropping their insurance and going there, and what names of what companies people are picking people up, if any, other than the FAIR plan. These are just some of the names that we curated. And again, this is all in the slide deck that is available to you, and also information about the FAIR plan for your residents who may be confused and as to what to do, and what if their only option is a company they've never heard of. Just one last thing, these are our tips to save money. And it's a tough market out there. We know that. That's why we're all here. That's why we're all doing this work together. And, you know, people say, well, is there anything I can cut to try to, in terms of my insurance, to try to bring the price to where I can afford it? The only place we really see it being safe is in your proper and contents, personal property, if you can reduce that. But even, you know, reducing your loss of use means that you don't have as much to cover your temporary rent if you have, God forbid, if you lose your home. So that is what we were going to share. And we do have the June 28th date. And that brings us right to the hour. I know, Neil, you had your hand up. Is it a quick question? Neil Peterson?
Yes.
Okay, fire away.
We're talking about homeowner insurance. It's primarily focused around HO3 policy, single family individual homes. But those people live in planned unit developments, townhouses, condos, HOAs. Often that property insurance is shared between the homeowner and the association. And I'm not sure that's always given enough attention in terms of what needs to be done,
Guidance.
discounts available, and so
Yeah.
on. Because the interaction between the homeowner and the association can vary depending upon CC&Rs. So that's another sticky wicket there.
For sure. As a matter of fact, I was at a preparedness event this Saturday in Santa Rosa and got to see my pal, Paul Lowenthal, who's a regular on these meetings, as well as our staff person, Annie Barber, who's so terrific. And, you know, we had a long chat with a gal who came up and talked about her planned unit development and the challenges that the unit owners are having and the challenges that the HOA are having. And we know we need to beef up what United Policyholders is offering to people on that area. So you flagged something that is on our radar, and thank you for double flagging it. So I want to thank again Chief Berlant and Brian Selecki. I want to thank Emily Rogan for helping support on today's program. And those of you who did not get your questions answered in the chat or during the program, as I said, go ahead and shoot your questions to Emily Rogan, emily@uphelp.org. She can have a running list. And then when we prep for the next meeting, we will do our best to get those questions to the speaker, to Michael Newman. And then if Berlant, if we have time, I think you can share, right, Michael? You guys can, I think we can do 40, you can have 45 and he can have another 15 or something like that. We'll work that out. So have a safe rest of your weeks. Thank you all for all the work you're doing. Thank you for showing up. And I think that's a wrap.